So there was only 3 occasions where I've seen people publicly using sewing machines or displaying their sewing machines. I don't think there were quilting bees, but they weren't the big deal they are now, and I never saw one. The 3 occasions all involved the same brand that most people probably ain't even heard of. And they were separated by years, even decades apart, and in 3 different areas of the country. The first time was at a church fair or a bazaar for a church. The lady had this sewing machine, which I will display right here. And yes, in this video, if I said some other person had this machine, really what I'm saying is some other person had this model and color of machine. So forgive me for that. I was, I don't know, I was probably like around 10 years old, 8, 9, 10, 11. I don't think I was that old, but anyway, it was fascinating to me with the window and everything. And I asked the lady if I could look at it closely, and she said yes. And so this was my first brush with the Coronado sewing machines. The last brush happened at least 25 years, now probably at least 30 years later, in a mountain tavern in New Mexico. And in that case, it was just some dude in the front window of a bar sewing. It was very busy. There might have been a festival or something going on. And I didn't really get a chance to talk to the dude, except that I said, "Oh, you got a Coronado?" And he goes, "Yeah." And we thumbs up to each other. I don't know why. The second time is where I was introduced to the story that will be the rest of the story. And it was in out in front of a visitor center in Yellowstone National Park, where he had these 2 machines. And he was telling the story out in front of the visitor center. And when we went into the visitor center, we asked the ranger who was there, we said, "Is that dude part of the, the park service or this museum or whatever it is?" And they go, "No, it's just some dude doing it on his own." And so this was in the early 1970s that happened. So I had gotten into sewing machines recently, like within a year. Actually, within 6 months of getting into them, I had a habit of going with my friends, and one of my friends likes to go to thrift stores, and so we went, and so I started looking for sewing machines, and I didn't see anything I really wanted for a while. But then the first sewing machine I actually ever bought was this this one machine, which it wasn't seized, but it was jammed. It was filthy as hell, and the box was practically almost close to falling apart. It ended up falling apart quickly. And the way I discovered it was, I was at a church thrift store. I'm looking at the sewing machines, and I was like, "Oh, there's nothing here I want." And I started walking away, and I just turned around to take one last look off to the side, and it, like, practically standing out in the middle of nowhere. It was hidden in the open. Because it wasn't with the other sewing machines. It was to the side and under like a table, but it was not hidden. It was just in a different place. And I was like, "Oh, it's in this green box. I wonder what's in there." And I opened it up, and right away I sort of recognized it. I don't know for sure it's the same one I think, but it was familiar, and I think it was a Coronado. And it's so funny. My reaction, which I'll get to later in the story. But, I said, oh, yeah, I'm buying this thing. So I get to the cash register, and the lady is looking at me like I'm stealing her. Like, well, she's not unhappy. She's smiling at me or whatever. I don't know. I think she went, I don't know. She seemed to understand that I was grabbing a good one. And so I started doing research on the sewing machine and the sewing machine company, and there's hardly anything on it. And that's when I discovered that there's like a dearth of information on some of the aspects of sewing machines. And I'm really happy that Senior and Kenmore have all their manuals online. But by the way, Sears is still a thing. It's just sort of in hibernation, if you ask me. Very smart of them to go into hibernation like that before going bankrupt. Yeah. Anyway, back to the story. And then I started remembering, these episodes of, and actually, it didn't really, this story is a little bit complicated and involved, so a lot of the bits and pieces weren't, in front of my mind right away. But I did know that there was a story, and so, I started doing research on it, and one thing that the research did do is it helped me clear up the timeline of things, because I was thinking some of this happened probably about 30 years before it did actually happen. One thing that gives me confidence in the story I'm about to tell you, seeing as how I've just heard it from a person on the sidewalk in front of a National Park Welcome Center, is that in the early 90s on cable TV, I saw a short video of about 15 minutes in length about this very subject, where it seemed like a local reporter got curious about what happened to the Coronado sewing machines and the company that he was familiar with. And so he did a report on what happened to him. And it didn't have the whole story as I'm telling you, but he did have enough of the story where it gives me confidence to go ahead and tell you the story. I did search for this video prior to making this video. I should rephrase that. I searched for that video in preparation for making this video and could not find it. So this is a story of personalities and the sewing machine industry in, I guess you could call them the early days. Not the early days, sort of the early days between the early days and more modern sewing machine times. So the Industrial Revolution was, pretty much in full swing. A lot of people had seen the success of industrialists. You had your railroad people and steamship people. But one of the ones that was the most impressive was Singer. And so somebody who I will call, I don't know his actual name, so I will call him by the firms that he ran. And he ran his first firm. Well, it may not have been his first firm, but the firm we're talking about changed its name, and its first name was Vindex. I think it was Vindex Manufacturing. And he was always looking to cash in on the Industrial Revolution, and he had a small foundry in a, like a brick warehouse for sewing machine companies. It was, a small operation, and he had a yard that they could do some work in, and they were always looking for a product that would make them wealthy, like Singer or somebody like that. And their little farm implements and toys, they were scraping out in existence, but they weren't getting, or he was not getting rich. So I think it was because some of the sewing machine patents were running out. He hired a mechanical engineer, somebody that was really young and who participating in pouring of the metal of his first prototype sewing machines that this young mechanical engineer actually designed from scratch. And the owner of this firm, I'll call him Vindex for now, he was very excited. He sold all of his tools and forms for his previous products, his farm implement parts and toys. And they had produced 6 working prototypes. So they had made these 6 sewing machines. And the very next day, Eldridge walks in and goes up into the office with Vindex. And nobody knows specifically what the exact words were, but basically Eldridge from National Sewing Machine, basically tells Vindex that he is going to get run out of business because they're going to undercut everybody. And so Eldridge told Vindex that if he made a deal to start badging his machines, that he would get the best price of anybody. Supposedly this was because this was actually National's first badge deal. Other deals Eldridge had were more in the vein of buying businesses and partnerships. Some people said that Eldridge could not have consolidated the sewing machine industry the way he did if Vindex hadn't have made this badge deal. So Vindex got the best priced badge deal. And so Vindex goes along with this. Eldridge says, well, in order to make your machines, you got to give me the right to use your name and so that I can make them for you. And so Vindex goes along with that idea. So Eldridge also says, well, if you're going to go along with this deal, why do you need to keep all these forms? I'll take all these forms off your hand. I'll pay you for them and make that also part of the deal. And that's basically the sum of the deal. So Eldridge comes back with the exemplars he's going to make for Vindex. And these machines are basically machines that were Vindex's design. It's like a slap in the face. And he is going to see how many Vindex wants to order. And so he also shows Vindex sewing machines that he's going to release called the Vindex A, which this is a clear slap in the face to Vindex. Vindex is pissed, but he goes ahead and orders a Vindex B, sewing machine, which I have actually recently seen one of those on Craigslist. Not recently, within a year though. Anyway, tried to get it, could not work a deal. The ad disappeared. Anyway, so they made an order for these Vindex Bs, and Eldridge also produces a lot of Vindex Cs. So Vindex goes and gets a new trademark. He trademarked Vindex Special, so that no matter what happens, his Vindex will be the special Vindex. And so Eldridge stops trying to up him with the Vindex trademark, and they make a couple iterations of the Vindex Special. And, you know, it is not the trademark that Vindex wanted to use. So he decided to change the name of his trademark to Coronado. And when asked about why he chose this new trademark name, he said he was, even though he had never been to the Southwest, he was really wanting to check it out and was desirous of going out to the Southwest and was enthralled with, the Old West and that sort of thing. And he also said that he liked the idea that people would say, it's a Coronado. He thought it had a certain ring, which, if you remember at the beginning of this video, I had mentioned that I had a funny reaction when seeing this sewing machine in the thrift shop. And what it was is I was sort of surprised to see it. And when I seen what it was, I go, it's a Coronado. And I think other people heard me say that. But that was one of the intentions of the Coronado, was for this expression to be like his jingle. It's a Coronado. But anyway, to get on with the story. So, basically, I'm pretty sure that Eldridge and Vindex, and now I'll start calling this guy Coronado. Vindex and Coronado were friends, and that they were fighting over this trademark name, Vindex. And I knew it was a Latin name, and this is one of the things that I sort of liked doing this research, is because at one time in my early youth, I knew what that actually meant. And I looked it up, and then I remembered, oh yeah, I remember what it means. And the trademark, or the word Vindex, is Latin for winner. And they were fighting over a Latin trademark. Right? But anyway, a few years later, Eldridge has to come back to Coronado and says, dude, we have to renegotiate this contract, because if you don't cut me some slack and renegotiate this contract to give you the best deal, because, what happened was he was going to have to charge an extra $3 to put the shiny finish on it. And the Godzilla finish was considered inferior. And $3 in those days was a big ask. And so he said, if you don't agree to those new terms of extra $3 for a shiny finish, then we're both going to go out of business. Because the Japanese are eating our lunch. And so Coronado agrees to this on the condition that nobody else on this one model that they were first talking about, this new contract, which is this one right here, that the only company that can have the blackest of black Godzilla finishes was Coronado. So this machine seems so brutalistic in the architectural meaning and sort of postmodern look, and the period style and the blackness of the machine is the reason why I call this machine the seamstress of Gotham. So if you look at all the other badge versions of this machine, none of them are as black as this version of the machine, and that was to sort of get back or to recover from the being slapped in the face by Aldrich about the Vindex A, B, and C. And so in the end, Eldridge did go out of business, and he actually went bankrupt. Now, Coronado went on for another 30 years, and he basically sold it through other retail outlets. In the United States, he had Gimbals, and in Canada, he had McLeod's. And, I think they did try some other markets. And I think that the young engineer for a while actually tried becoming a salesman, and he just didn't think it was worth it in the end, and especially because Coronado had just gotten these retailers to sell those machines. So, the young engineer did get another 2 weeks of work. Coronado offered, this is later on, after National's out of business, and Coronado's getting their machines from Japan, badged, and Coronado gives that engineer he wants to give him a 1 week job, because, they're going over to Japan, they want him to engineer something to make their machine a little unique, and, so he does it on the condition instead of 1 week, he gets 2 weeks. Now, I'm not exactly sure the exact reason why Coronado wanted or needed this engineer to design something, but the extra week was so that he could design this new feature, and that was the two-step buttonholer, right? And so this machine has a two-step buttonhole, which is actually sort of a good idea. I mean, the tacks on each end would become sort of fixed in the amount of tacks, but it seems like a really smart idea, two-step buttonhole. But anyway, the brother copies that thing right away. They didn't patent it or nothing. It was just making another gear or something that made it work. I haven't torn into it that deep to see how it works. And actually, when it comes to that subject, I don't have a manual for this machine or the equivalent brother machine, which is the Brother 280, I think. So if anybody knows where I can get either a PDF or photographs of the pages, I would appreciate having that, because I still don't know I don't have the manual for it, and I'd like to read the manual for it. I did not realize that this green Coronado was the same model that had the two-step buttonholer until I started playing with the machine. So when doing the homework for this video, I came across a website called needlebar.org, and it had a page called National Sewing Machines by Claire Sherwell and Alan Quinn. And unfortunately, that site has disappeared at the time of me putting this video together. However, I did save the page, and we can look at it through my screencast tool. So, here we are at the Needle Bar National Sewing Machines. And as you can expect, or would expect, we have the VBTT Type 1 as the first, going on through the VBTT Type 5. Then we go into the Vindex machines, and we have it labeled Type 1, Type 2, and then we have a couple other names for it listed and badges for it listed. But I've always heard that these machines were Vindex A, Vindex B. It doesn't really show a Vindex C, I don't think. And then the Vindex specials come out, and those are not listed at all. Vindex special is not listed in this listing of national machines, but the Vindex specials were the same thing as a VBTT Type 5. So it shows that Eldridge interrupted his VBTT series to make the Vindex machines until the battle for the Vindex trademark is over, when he returns to the VBTT Type 5 model and continues on. Let's see. And then he goes on. One more of interest on this page is the, let's see if I can find it here. Oh, here it is. The River So Rex, which, if you notice, this is a gray one, and this is the Montgomery Ward's version. And Montgomery Ward's is pretty darn big. Almost, like as I recall, everywhere there was a Sears, there was a Ward's at the same mall, same size, selling the same things, different brands. Sears was bigger in a sense, though, that they had these catalog stores, mainly in small towns and villages, where you could pick up packages, sort of like a Amazon pickup in a way. But they'd also have usually have a tire changing center there, and where they'd sell tires, and they'd have like a washing machine up front as a model to sell. But it would not be a full-blown department store. As far as the department store goes, and Ward's had catalogs just like Sears did. Ward's was basically patterned off of Sears, but it don't have a black one. It's a gray one. That's sort of a little bit of a, what we call it, corroboration of the story. Eldridge was the one that had bought the tools and forms for Vindex's previous products when they switched over to doing sewing machines. And also, Eldridge continued to use the Vindex name in regard to those products as a subdivision of National Sewing Machine. So, one might notice how ironic it is that Eldridge tried to consolidate the sewing machine manufacturing, and he got out Eldridged by foreign powers and cheap labor from overseas. I don't really think that Eldridge personally went bankrupt, though. It's hard to imagine that he would allow that to happen. He probably owns half a brother or something. Anyway, his company went bankrupt before Coronado's. So, in my putting this project together, I was able to collect a few of these machines. I have two Vindex specials, one of which is electric. I have the Seamstress of Gotham. I have a Coronado RBR. And I have the 4109. That's one of the benefits of being in the cult, is you end up with a bunch of obscure sewing machines. So these are my machines of the Vindex and Coronado line. I would only think that 2 or 3, maybe 4 more machines might be desirable for the collection. Of course, if having a Vindex A or B being preferred, since it was actually the one ordered by Vindex, unless there's a substantial difference in the mechanics of the A, which would probably be closer to the original version. And then there's, I wouldn't mind having a Class 15 clone from Japan. And then I guess what would you call it? The Unicorn is one of those 6 original Vindex prototypes. But those were probably destroyed, gathered by Eldridge and destroyed. So, as to what happened to Coronado, the reporter that I mentioned earlier in the video went and sought him out. He found the offices of Coronado, which were basically shut down and more or less abandoned. A little 2-room office in the 2nd floor of a strip mall type building in LA. So yes, Coronado did go to the Southwest. He ended up in LA, and the reporter found him. He was so old, he was on his way out. He really couldn't do an interview. As I recall, the reporter did get a photograph of him in his convalescent bed, and yeah, he shut his company down due to his retirement, approximately at the same time that Gimbel's department store shut down. So that's what, he out-survived National as a company by 30 years. So the question is, who was the actual Vindex? National or Coronado? And the answer is Singer. So why do I have the subtitle, The Last Disciple of a Sewing Machine Cult? Is because we had these three dedicated people with their proud of their Coronados, and I got to hear the story from one of them, and to me, it seems sort of like a order, a secret order, or something like that, meant to keep the Coronado whatever alive or something. But I have not heard, haven't seen any of those people since the 90s, and when I'm looking on the internet, I don't hear anything about the story or these people. So, makes me think that maybe I'm the only one that remembers this. Oh, but I'm probably not, actually. There's probably other people that have heard it, and I'd be interested in hearing about that. And if there's, if I'm not the last disciple of the sewing machine cult, Vindex Coronado, well, y'all can take leadership. All right, y'all guys have a good evening.